Um, the microphone on the rabbi's desk is not on.
Hello? Hello?
No, it's not on.
Oops, it's falling out of this thing. Let's go.
Still not on.
Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, they can. It's on.
Oh, there it's on. Okay.
Shabbat Shalom. I want to welcome you all to the temple tonight. Glad to see you. And we have some visitors. Ron and Marlene Green. What? What? What's going on?
How's that?
How is this? Better?
Now you have to put your mouth closer.
I'd like to welcome some people who are here for the first time. Ron and Marlene Green from Sun City. Will you stand so we... Hello. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. And then we have William Warren, who's visiting us from New Jersey. And where are you, William? Thank you for coming. Hope you come every week that you're here. So I'd just like to welcome you and give you the rabbi.
Whoop, I'm sorry. There we go. Can you hear me? Yes. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you, B, for that introduction. I think we have our microphones straight, and we are here to celebrate Shabbat and also to mark the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Day, which is this coming Monday. And so we're going to be dedicating parts of the service to this holiday, which is traditionally observed, as you know, on the third Monday of January of each year to mark the closest day to Martin Luther King's actual birthday. And Martin Luther King, of course, was the chief spokesperson for nonviolent activism in the civil rights movement. Reverend King participated in and led peaceful marches for the rights of all Americans, blacks and whites alike, to vote and other basic civil rights, which we're still struggling with today. In particular, the Reverend King led the 1955 Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, and later became the first president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And as president of that conference, he led the unsuccessful Albany movement in Albany, Georgia, where I was rabbi for 10 years, and helped to organize some of the nonviolent 1963 protests in Birmingham, Alabama. Reverend King was one of the chief organizers of the 1963 March on Washington, where he delivered his I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And this was a memorable 17-minute speech. It was only later dubbed the I Have a Dream speech, and the cantor will also read from this toward the end of the service tonight. And in the speech, the most famous passage in which he departed from his prepared text, possibly at the prompting of Mahalia Jackson, who shouted behind him, "Tell them about the dream," the Reverend King said, "I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live up the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. We have her, Geraldine Travis, wave to us, and she was the first black woman elected to the House of Representatives in the state of Michigan. And so we have right here someone who was part of that struggle. And so, but we and Geraldine, if you want to run for office again in Arizona, I'll give you my endorsement. That's the word, yes. But all right, she's retired. But I think most of us are old enough to have lived through at least part of that struggle. And so we're aware of what it was, and we're aware that there's still many struggles yet to go through. And so with that, we're going to come back to this a number of times. We have a number of excerpts from Dr. King's speech and a sermonette from our educator, Andre Ivory. And yes. Oh, yes. Yes. And Rabbi Abrams, who just recently departed, was one of the rabbis who marched for civil rights. This is something we're not going to be able to go into as much depth as it warrants, but rabbis, and particularly Reform rabbis, played an important role in the civil rights struggle in the 1960s. A whole group of Reform rabbis, or mostly Reform rabbis, were arrested in St. Augustine, Florida, when they came in with a black guy and they refused to vacate seats at a what do they call it, a luncheonette counter. You know, they used to have in like Woolworths where you'd sit around the counter. It wasn't really a table, and it was segregated, so I think it was whites only, and they refused to abide by that law, and they got arrested. And there were many other roles that Reform rabbis played in, especially Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. And Rabbi Abrams played his own role in this, and it's too bad that he couldn't be here to share his experiences firsthand. So with that is just a basic introduction. Oh, and our educator, Andre Ivory, will do a sermonette on this as well. So with that is just a short introduction. Where we begin our Shabbat services on page 142 with the Shalom Aleichem. You may rise, and depending on your COVID sensitivities, you can hold hands and jump up and down with or without masks on. Page 142.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharim, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Volchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Amlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Please be seated. We continue with the blessing of the candles on page 120. I'd like to ask Judy Maggi to come forward to light and to bless the candles in memory of her son, Joel Benjamin Mendel.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue now with Lechadodi on page 138.
Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala
b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shehamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Ishmi'anu el ha'meyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem hotif'eret v'lithilah Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi b'shalom aderet ba'ala Gam b'simcha u'b'tzahla Soch emunei am segula Boi kala Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We turn now to page 220. I'd like to now ask Larry Kalish to come forward to read the prayers, even if, in memory of his father, Louis Kalish, page 220. And then he'll continue with the reading, Therefore These Limbs, on page 221.
Even if our mouths were full of song as the sea, and our tongues full of joy in countless waves, and our lips full of praise as wide as the sky's expanse, and were our eyes to shine like sun and moon, if our hands were spread out like heaven's eagles, and our feet swift like young deer, we could never thank you adequately, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to bless your name for a 10,000th of the many myriads of times you granted favors to our ancestors and to us.
Amen.
Therefore, these limbs which you have formed in us, in this spirit and soul that you have breathed into our nostrils, this tongue which you have set in our mouths, they must acknowledge, bless, praise, and glorify your name, O our sovereign. For every mouth will acknowledge you, and every tongue pledge homage to you, and every knee bend in your presence. Every upright person shall bow before you, every heart will revere you, and every inmost thought will sing to your name. And David said, let all my bones exclaim, who is like you, Adonai? As David continued, "Bless Adonai, O my soul, and let my inner being praise your holy name."
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week we read Parshat B'Shalach, and it tells a fascinating story. Now, from Egypt to Israel is a journey of about 11 days if you walk quick. Now, our group might take a little bit longer, but we could borrow some of those electric scooters from Fry's, and we could probably make it in 8 days. But if you walk at a reasonable pace, 11 days, give or take 24 hours. And yet, as we know, it took how long to take the children of Israel through the desert? 40 years. Yes, 40 years. The reason for this, or there's many reasons for this, the rabbis has argued about why. Why did a whole generation have to stay in the desert for so long? And it wasn't just long, it was for eternity, because they were going to pass away there. It was only their children and their grandchildren who were going to make it into the land of Israel. And so it was really, in some ways, a death sentence. So one reason, of course, is that the Israelites needed time, generational time, to internalize the spiritual experience. True spirituality cannot be acquired in the shallow waters of superficiality. It's just not possible. It just takes time. It takes experience. It takes blood and tears and sweat, not necessarily in that order. Now, we yearn for the nostalgic past. It's inevitable, right? So no matter how comfortable we are today, no matter how nice our house may be, we think about the things in the past that we like that are lost, or so we envision them. And much of this involves food. We remember certain foods that our mothers or maybe our grandmothers made, and it brings back memories, and we remember this. And that is why in this week's portion, the Israelites mention the Egyptian food that they miss. They miss Egyptian food. The cucumbers were so fresh. All right, I'm sure Egyptian food is delicious, but they are, of course, forgetting one basic fact, that they were slaves in Egypt, right? And even if they had the best cucumbers, they were still slaves. And yet, we understand that people may regret leaving. And in this case, the Israelites, or some of the Israelites, maybe even many of the Israelites, regretted it to the point that they wanted to return. And they kind of focused on, or they ruminated on certain food items. This is what we miss in particular. But anytime you make changes in your life, you're going to have a certain degree of regret. And that is one of the reasons why it is said that God didn't take them through the most direct route, right? There was a super highway in the north that went right along the ocean, and it wouldn't have even been 11 days, even without the electric carts from Fry's. But it was in the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines had an army, and there were other little armies roaming around from the Moabites and the Jebusites, etc. And God feared that when the Israelites saw one or more of these armies, that they would get fearful, and that this sense of we miss Egypt would become exacerbated, and some of them might have fled backwards. And I use that term intentionally. This week I was reading on my Google feed, and I saw an article about a North Korean that had defected, and then he defected back again, and they didn't catch him, so that he managed to, they thought it was a false alarm, and the South Koreans would normally have stopped him from going back, but he was able to get back. They don't know what happened to him. The North Koreans have a standing policy of shooting people trying to come into their borders, and if not, they certainly are going to punish him severely. And yet, for whatever reason, he wanted to go back. And so this may be, from what little we know about North Korea, may seem inexplicable to us. And yet, when we hear such things, we think that normal people would never think that way, like that North Korean guy. He's in the South. He's in a land of freedom, of democracy, of capitalism. Why would he go back to one of the countries that's one of the 3 or 4 worst governments in the entire world, where so many people are on the verge of starving and there's such repression? And yet this guy did. He wanted to. And then when we look at the Torah, this portion, we see that God is afraid that many of us might have done the same thing under similar circumstances. I'll come back to this a little bit later around the time of the Torah reading. Now we begin our Mariv service with the Baruch Hu on page 146. Please rise. Please remain standing. I'd like to ask Arnie Berkowitz to come forward to read the prayers in the beginning and your praise, which both can be found on page 229. He's reading them in memory of his father, Benjamin Berkowitz of blessed memory. Page 229.
In the beginning, even then, a new light was sown for the righteous, a promise that your light would become the catalyst first of order, and then for hope. Author of language and light, help us to use words as you have, to cast light into darkness, dark waters, and draw unto justice and truth. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer Hamvarat. You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light, and from nothing at all. We could perceive in a world that has turned old, a shimmering new creative light before our eyes, made this moment, just for us. How much of life reveals your presence? How much Torah and unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the seal. You are praised who forms from the clay the cloaks of our lives and delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer Hamvarat. Amen.
Amen. A Martin Luther King quote, People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. We continue now with the Shema, the Declaration of Faith, on page 152.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kavod Malachuto Le'olam Va'ed Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
We join together, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Please be seated. We all join together in the Ve'ahavta, so please join together.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשבתך ובקומך וקשרתם לאור על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם עמוסות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי וייתן גירושים לילדיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Shall love the Lord thy God with all thy heart. And all these words which I command you on this day shall be in thy heart, shall be in thy heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt be when thou sittest in the house, when thou walkest by the way, and when thou risest up, and when thou liest down, and when thou liest down. Thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and they shall be for frontlets between thine eyes. And thou shalt write them on the doorposts of thy house, and upon thy gates, and upon thy gates, that ye may remember and do all of my commandments, and be holy unto your God, unto your God, unto your God.
We continue with another Martin Luther King quote read by Diane Shapiro.
In the cruelties of slavery could not stop us. If that could not be, the opposition we now face will surely fail. Because the goal of America is freedom, abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny. And I want to tell you, I was there with Rabbi Abrams, and it was a wonderful experience, and I'm so sorry we don't have the freedoms that our people should have.
Thank you, Diane. We continue with the Mi Chamocha on page 158, and then the sermonette by our educator, Andre Ivory.
Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Ami amo baba ali mandona, mi kamo ba nehida makodesh, no rate hilak o se bela, no rate hilak o se bela. מלכות פרעה בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה מרים, זה אלינו ואמרו, זה אלינו אמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם מועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם מועד. אני כמוך בעלים אדוני, Bakode, no ratahilo, oh say bella, no ratahilo, oh say bella. Ay la 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 la, ya 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 la la la, ya la 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 la. V'nei amar, kifad Adonai et Yaakov, וגלומי על חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גר ישראל.
It's appropriate that I'm speaking right after Mi Chamocha, because Mi Chamocha, the song, translates to a rhetorical question: who is like God? Right? There's nothing we know of that is like God. Coincidentally, almost coincidentally, almost the exact same date as today in 1963, Dr. King and Rabbi Heschel actually met for the first time at a conference in Chicago on racism and religion. And both were set to give speeches on different days, and then on the final day of the conference, they were to sit on a panel together. And the one thing that bonded them together, they hadn't met before this conference, but the one thing that bound them together actually is a theme that comes from Mi Chamocha. They thought Rabbi Heschel was set to speak first, and he got up and he talked about how if you subdivide God's creation into different categories, you, in fact, are actually denying God's creation. Who are we as human beings to subdivide what God has so perfectly created, all of you, into different categories? How dare we as individuals do that? When Rabbi Heschel was done speaking, Dr. King was sitting at the other end of the table, or at the other end of the panel, and as Rabbi Heschel was set to sit back down, Dr. King walked along the backside of the panel, took Rabbi Heschel by the arm, and talked to him backstage and said, "First of all, your message is almost exactly the same as what I'm getting ready to deliver in a little bit. but I love you for the simple fact that you said exactly what you said, because that's what I believe. Mi chamocha ba'alim Adonai. Who is like God? Not any of us sitting in this room. Not any of us who might be traveling the streets tonight or in the air or walking around. No one has the power to subdivide creation than God. No one has that right. Why do we celebrate this weekend? Because we want to have a parade and some kids have a day off of school on Monday, which I firmly believe the kids should not have a day off of school on Monday, that they should be in school listening to Dr. King's speeches all day long, because it's that important to the course of American history. But because we all have a responsibility not to just remember Dr. King, but to remember ultimately what he was talking about. And it wasn't just civil rights. Dr. King talked, in fact, his last speech ever given, he was in Memphis, Tennessee, which is my father's birthplace, by the way, and he was speaking on the garbage workers of Memphis were demanding fair wages and fair treatment in employment. So he was a labor leader as well. But everything that he spoke about came down to one basic premise: that we are all the same. And we all struggle with the exact same things, and primarily we struggle with the idea of loving one another. It's probably the most complicated thing for human beings to grasp. To treat each other as we would like ourselves to be treated. We struggle with that because we have a problem with things that are different. But once again, who are we to deny God's creation? Every one of us, no matter where we come from, what we've been through, what difficulties we have, what attributes on one side of the table we may have over the other. Some jump higher, some sing better, some speak better, some are more intelligent, but at the end of the day, we all deserve one thing. What God calls us to do is to love each other. So on this holiday weekend, don't just celebrate with watching some football games. And sure enough, I'll be doing some of that this weekend for sure. I am as fallible as any other human being. When my favorite football team plays, I must sit down and watch. But also let this holiday be a reminder that we all have a duty. That our job is not done just because we may have decided to solve the problems of one group or another, but your job is not done until you've decided to walk out your front door and love your neighbors as much as you love yourself. And to love everyone who sits in this room as much as you love yourself. That's what Dr. King wanted us to do. And at that point, both combined with Dr. King's dream and the dream of every Jew that has ever existed, we will create the world in which we want to see. It's not up to just one person in history. It's up to every person in this room. We all have a job to do, and that's what this holiday is about. And I'll leave you with this final thought. I came across it in Judaism 101 class last night, and it woke me up. We were talking about the structure of the Tanakh. And Rabbi Heschel had an excerpt in our workbook, and it's from his writing, What Manner of Man is the Prophet? And he writes, the prophet is a man who feels fiercely. God has thrust a burden upon his soul, and he is stunned at man's fierce greed. Prophecy is the voice that God has lent to the silent agony. It is a form of living, a crossing point of God and man. God is raging in the prophet's words. It is my belief that in our history, Dr. King will go down as a prophet because his work had a fire in his heart. And if we take that bit of fire and put it in our own heart, our task of repairing the world will become that much easier. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, Andre, and thank you very much. We rise now for the tefillah, beginning on page 164.
Adonai, Sivetai Tiftach, Ubi Agid Tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor HaNorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot, V'imahot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומשיח ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הגובר רבים רבים, סומך נובלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסירים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומגדל מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
I'd like to now ask Gloria Bold to come forward to read the prayer, We Reach for You, Our God, which you can find on page 181. This is in memory of her grandmother, Lena Dublin, page 181.
We reach for you, our God, from our quiet places. May we stand still for a brief moment and listen to the rain. Stand still for a brief moment and watch the play of sunlight and shadow on the leaves. For a brief moment, listen to the world. Let us stop the wheels of every day to be aware of Shabbat. Find the stillness of the sanctuary which the soul cherished. Renew the covenant of an ancient people. We need a quiet space to test the balance of our days. the weight of our own deeds against the heaviness of the world's demands. The balance is precarious. Steady us with faith. Quiet places and stillness where we will hear our own best impulses speak. Quiet places and stillness from which we will reach out to each other. We will find strength in silence, and with this strength, we will turn again to your service.
Please be seated as the cantor will sing the civil rights song, We Will Overcome Today, and we'll follow that with a moment of silent prayer and meditation.
Please join me. We will overcome. We will overcome. We will overcome today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we will overcome today. We will live in peace. We will live in peace. We will live in peace. We will live in peace today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we will live in peace today. Say shalom, Imrama, Huya, say shalom, Aleinu, Ve'al kol Israel, Ve'imru, Amen. Oh, say shalom, Imrama, Huya, say shalom, Aleinu, Be'ako Yisrael Be'imru Amen. Oh, say shalom Bimramah Uya say shalom Aleinu Be'ako Yisrael Be'imru Amen. Oh, say shalom Bimramah Ya'aseh shalom aleinu be'ako Yisrael be'imru amen.
We turn to page 371 for the Mishaberach. I spoke yesterday with Harvey Gordon, and he and Jan Sotis have been leaders of our congregation for quite a few years and been very involved in everything here. And they both have mild cases of COVID. Jan doesn't have any symptoms, and Harvey has mostly, as of yesterday, just a scratchy throat. But they're both in quarantine, and so we pray for their rapid and full recovery. And for Matthew, is he still recovering? He's recovered. Okay. So congratulations to him and to all of those that we love. If you could think in your heads and feel in your hearts as we join together in the Mishaberach.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor Abraham Le'imosenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor Abraham la'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah Shema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We turn now to page 362 for the Torah service. Please rise.
En kamo kava Elohim Adonai, ve'en k'ma'asecha, malachut sheba, malachut kol amim, u'memshachecha michal dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch, le'olam va'ed. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, u'davar Adonai merushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'mo Yisrael bekedushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Lecha Adonai Hagedura, Hagedura, Hasheferet, Hanetzach v'Haoz. Ki kol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, Ki kol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Lecha Adonai Hamalacha, V'hamid na'aseh lechol erosh. Al shelosha devarim, olam, olam, omer. Al shelosha devarim, al shelosha devarim, al shelosha devarim, olam, olam, omer. Al haTorah, va'al ha'avodah, va'al gimelut hasadim. Al haTorah, va'al ha'avodah, va'al gimelut hasadim. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, olam, olam, omer. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, olam, olam, omer. Lo yisagor el goy cherem, lo yilmedu milchama, lo לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב, לא ילמדו מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב, לא ילמדו מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב, לא ילמדו מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב, לא ילמדו מלחמה.
Please be seated. Shabbat Shalom. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, this is Parshat B'Shalach, which is in the book of Exodus. And we very quickly have moved through the 10 plagues. And when I was a child, I envisioned that each week would be one plague. And we would have 10 weeks, so we could devote one week to blood, and 1 week to frogs, and 1 week to locusts. And I was very disappointed to see that they came and went in just a couple of weeks. So we've done through the 10 plagues very quickly, and the Israelites are out of Egypt. And they must have looked around and they thought, okay, we've been through this miraculous series of events, and God came to our defense and did all these things to punish the Egyptians. And so now here we are. We've escaped. We're free. And they looked around and they saw nothing but sand. It looked like Sun City before 1960. And they must have thought, well, you know, what's happened? What is the meaning of these miracles? It seems so anticlimactic in some ways. And so today we're not in a dissimilar situation. We've been through the last 2 years of something that was before this relegated to B or C films that dealt with science fiction, that you can find the old films on Netflix about the viral epidemic, or and so forth. And here we are living through it and hopefully coming through it towards the end, but not quite at the end. And so, on one hand, we've been through miraculous times. On the other hand, it feels like nothing's happening. We've been in our houses mostly the last 2 years. We're in our 3rd year, and we're staying home. And a big excursion, a very dangerous excursion. Used to be a dangerous excursion, you'd have to go hunting rhinoceroses up close or something. Now, going to the supermarket for yogurt is considered highly, well, it is, isn't it? It's highly risky. You could come back with a fatal or near fatal disease. And so we're prompted, we're encouraged, we're conditioned to stay home, and and it feels like nothing is happening. And so this is what the Israelites were going through, that they didn't choose their set of circumstances any more than we chose our circumstances. And so, facing the situation that they faced or that we faced, the challenge is, how do you make the best out of a situation? How can you proceed with a vigorous and enthusiastic and adventurous encounter with life under less than ideal circumstances? Now, the Israelites come out of Egypt. It is true. And so on one hand, they're victorious. They are triumphant. But on the other hand, they're very frightened and dispirited. And as I said just a few minutes ago, many of them considered the possibility of running back to Egypt. They're so upset. They're so worried. They're so insecure. And they have what to be insecure about, right? Because all around them they look, they see nothing but sand. And when they talk to each other, they hear nothing of stories of the Philistine soldiers who are strong and brave and have the best, most high-tech equipment. And so, on one hand, they face the reality that they have seen with their own eyes, that miracles can alter the course of nature. And so, we don't necessarily know what that sentence means when I say miracles can alter the course of nature, but I think that most of us can accept that on some level, whether we're rationalists or mystics, that may indeed be true. And yet, whether we believe in it literally or figuratively, that it might be true. And even if we believe in it in the most literal fashion, it still leaves us with the fact that miracles, so on one hand, miracles can alter the course of nature, but on the other hand, miracles leave human nature unaltered. All right, let me say that again. Miracles can alter the course of nature, but on the other hand, miracles can leave human nature unaltered. In other words, we could go through, as we did in Egypt, the most miraculous things. And you could see the sky turning so dark that nobody could see anything, not even a flicker. A completely unnatural darkness. On the other hand, people are people, and people don't change just because they undergo miraculous circumstances. And so, people can see divine power on one hand, but they remain the same personality types that they were just a few weeks ago. So what I would argue is that what constitutes the foundation of Jewish faith, if you will, is the routine of daily life rather than the drama of historical events. What's important is that we can take the challenges that we faced day by day. These challenges that in many of our cases is no challenge, is inertia, is being stuck in the house. This is the biggest challenge. And dealing with all of the difficulties, the bureaucracy and the inertia and the lack of anything exciting happens. That this is in some ways a bigger challenge than Pharaoh, than all of these rules of slavery that were. And faith has to be planted like a seed and nurtured within our own hearts, and it grows over the course of a very long time. And it doesn't need miraculous events in order to grow. In fact, it's not the miraculous events that's going to make a critical difference. It is our own determination to develop ourselves, to develop our own characters in ways that are meaningful for us and that are beneficial for our society. We're here this week to honor the legacy of the Reverend Martin Luther King, a man who put his cause above himself. And he did that through little acts, through everything that he did. And of course, we may remember him for the big acts, for that I Have a Dream speech that is considered one of the finest speeches in all of recorded history. But that's not what got him to that place in front of the Lincoln Memorial on that day. And so each of us can deal with the Pharaoh inside ourselves. And we can do so no matter what the conditions are that we live in, and especially when we live in conditions of inertia and stagnation, as many of us do, not for any fault of our own, but because of the reality of life today, of our external circumstances that we face. And so I'd like to now call up for the reading, for the blessing of the Torah, Russ Robbins, who is doing double duty this week. He is also manning the sound booth and the video booth. And so this is Aliyah is in memory of his mother, Josephine H. Robbins. And so, Russ, I would ask you to come forward to bless the Torah. And now it's customary to offer you to read it, but I won't ask you to read it because I know that you're not.
My glasses aren't just good tonight, so I can't.
Right there.
Baruch Adonai Barak.
Baruch Adonai Havarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayhi b'shalach paro et ha'am v'lo nacham Elohim derech erech plishtim. And God sent Pharaoh the nation away from Pharaoh, and he didn't rest. And God sent the Israelites, did not send the Israelites on the highway toward or through the Philistine territory. Ki karov hu, even though it was closer. Ki amar Elohim peni nachem am beratem mimilchama v'shuvu mitzrayma. And God said, because if I send them on the way through the Philistines, derech plishtim, that maybe they will become frightened and that they will want to run back to Egypt. V'shuvu Mitzrayim, and they will want to go back to Egypt. V'sav Elohim et ha'am derech hamidbar. And so God sent the Israelites derech hamidbar, through the depth of the Sinai desert, deep into the desert. Yam Suf, from Yam Suf, from the Sea of Reeds. Chamushim alav b'nei Israel me'eretz Mitzrayim. Chamushim is an unusual word. It would appear to mean armed, as in armed with weapons. And I believe that's how most of the translators translate that. So the Israelites were armed, when they went on this trip. Chamushim alav b'nei Israel me'eretz Mitzrayim. Vayikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef. And they took with them the bones of Joseph. If you remember, Joseph's last request of his kinfolk is that he be buried, or that he be prepared, embalmed, and put into a crypt. And that when the time came, when the Israelites left, as he expected it would eventually come, that they take his bones with them. And that's exactly what they did right here. Ki hashva hashva et b'nei Yisrael lemor pakadi pakod Elohem etchem v'ha'alotem et atzmoti mizeh etchem vayisu mesechat vayilchu ba'otam bekitzeh hamidbar. And God followed the Israelites in a cloud, haderech v'layla ba'amud eish, and in the daytime it was clouds above them, and at night it was a pillar of fire. Laha'ir lachem lalechet yamam v'layla, to show them where to go during the day and during the night. Lo yamis amud hanan yamam imad ha'esh laila lifnei ha'am. And God did not leave them for a moment during the day when God appeared as clouds, and at night when God appeared as pillars of fire. God was with the Israelites day and night in this stage of the Exodus.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'rochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Okay, this wasn't arranged in advance, but Russ is going to lift the Torah, so please rise for the Hagbah and the Galila. If you don't mind, you can open it up a little bit. Show them and turn around. There you go. And then you turn back around and close it up. And
Hallelujah, et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado. Hodo al eretz v'shamayim v'yar keren la'amo tehila lekol chasidav Livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'tei kedula li'yotzer bereshit, Shelo asanu yeh ha'aratzot v'lo samanu ki mishpechot ha'adama Shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'goraleinu k'kol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Please be seated for just a moment. We remember the yahrzeits of Benjamin Berkowitz, the father of Arnie, Lena Dublin, the grandmother of Gloria Bold, Morris Feinberg, the father of Bernie, Saul R. Glass, the father of Judy Fagan, Louis Kalish, the father of Larry, Arvid Q. Longmire, the father-in-law of Bonnie, Joel Benjamin Mandel, is that right? Benjamin Joel. I'm sorry. The son of Judy Maggi, and may his memory always be for a blessing, Judy. Stanley Mandel, the father of Dane, Josephine R. Robbins, the mother of Russ, Rose Rosenberg, the mother of Reva Litt, Bruce Shanis, the son of Joseph and Myrna, Abel Toby, the father of Jack, and all of the founding generation whose memorial lights are lit on the yahrzeit board. Please rise as we join together for all of those and all others that we hold dear in our hearts. On page 598, we join together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei rabbah, v'yalma dibra krutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, u'b'chayei dekol beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'b'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach V'Olam Ulamei Amaya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitboar V'Yitraman V'Yitnaseh V'Yitadar V'Yitalel V'Yitalal Shmei Dekudsha Brichu Leila Min Kol Berchata V'Shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiram bi'alma v'yimru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom ben Ramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and all humanity, to which we say, Amen. Amen. Please be seated. I'd now turn it over to the cantor for the final Martin Luther King quote, as well as the anthem based on the same theme.
I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring." I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Yes, it is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. And so I took these words and jangled them around in my head and came out with a different version, and this is my song. I have a dream that hatred and war will cease. I have a dream of brotherhood and peace. I have a dream far-reaching and mighty deep. I have a dream, a promise I must keep. Hear the dream at its creation, sing hope for those in need. Feel the gleam of inspiration, bringing courage to succeed. I have a dream, our future is bright and fair. I have a dream to nurture with great care. I have a dream that life is its own birthright. I have a dream to guide us toward the light. Join the dream and we will greet each day with plans of worth. Let the stream of kindness lead our way to a heaven on earth. I have a dream, harmonious and powerful. I have a dream that honors one and all. Awakened from sleep, united with one great theme. theme that soon will succeed this dreamer with a dream. For you shall become the dreamer and the dream.
It's really hard to follow something as beautiful as that. Thank you, Cantor. And I just want to tell you a little story, very short. We were in Washington, D.C. in May, and we went to the Martin Luther King Memorial. It was very, very wonderful to see it, very inspirational, and if you get to the area, go and see it. I'm having a fight with the microphone. I wanted to mention to you some announcements. On February 27th, there is a ball game, and the ball game is being set up by the Brotherhood, who advised me that they have fabulous seats. So you might want to sign up. It's Sunday, February 27th, 1 p.m. The tickets are $40. They said they're right above the dugout, so that's the best place. Also, I want to remind you about Torah study. I'm in it, and it's at 11 o'clock on Wednesdays on Zoom. And I'm a neophyte when it comes to reading the Torah, so many cases I have very little to say. But we have fabulous comments. Rabbi picks a very controversial subject, and we all have interesting comments, from the newer comments from the 30-year-olds to the wisdom of the 100-year-olds. It is just amazing to hear them. So I hope you will join the Torah class soon. Also, I hear that the adult education is preparing new classes, and you will hear about it in February. So thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, B. Yes, you are struggling with the microphone, as am I. Oh. I guess my attached microphone, the battery seems to have died, but just in time. Riva Litt is our chair of adult ed in her adult education committee. I believe they're working on a course on God. It'll be 3 sessions in February on a Thursday morning, starting the second week in February. And we're going to look at a new book that just came out. We're going to look at one part of it, to look at one particular perspective of God, as seen by 6 or 7 different interpreters. And so you're all invited to sign up for the course. There should be material available within the next couple of days, and so we look forward to that. We conclude our service. A very special service in honor of Martin Luther King and his legacy of love and the dream of peace, with the benediction and then Tfilat Derech. Then we're going to sing our way back to the back, where we'll do the Kiddush and the Hamotzi, as is our new custom over the past couple of weeks, inspired by a suggestion from Vicky. Please rise for the benediction. May God bless you and keep you.
Yair Adonai, panav elecha v'chuneka.
May God's light shine upon you, and may God be gracious to you.
Yisa Adonai, panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
May you feel God's presence within you always, and may you find peace, have health, and find love. And let us say,
Amen. May we be blessed as we go on our way. May we be guided in peace. May we be blessed with health and joy. May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen. May we be sheltered by the wings of peace. May we be kept in safety and in love. May grace and compassion find their way to every soul. May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bim. Bim bam, bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Hoy, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom.